Hello and welcome to episode 26, I think this is. And today I'm going to be talking about issues 9 and 10. I think it is. Yes, definitely 9 and 10. And it's probably going to take about an hour. So each issue usually takes me about half an hour to run through. So feel free at the half hour point to stop if you want to stop or whatever. But it'd be better if you stay and if you like and press subscribe and all that podcastery thing that you're supposed to do, which I never bother doing. So who've we got? We've got a few people in the live stream here. So we've got Emily, Sezzy, Therese, Kat, Mrs. Pogo, Cheryl B. Hello, everyone. I hate normally doing that, but why not for a change? So we'll go straight into it. And I want you to have a look at the cover of issue 9. And you may recognize our model on the front there. This is the lovely Kerry Smith. And Kerry, I've been trying to get Kerry to come on for a couple of weeks now. We were going to do this together. But for some reason, we've kind of, well, it's the time lag, the time difference between the UK and Texas, but we keep kind of missing each other. She's busy, and then her husband has a birthday. Oh, I mean, how inconvenient is that? So I'm hoping she'll come on next week, but I had to do the run through of the magazine because of another guest that I've got coming on Friday, which I'll tell you about later on. So anyway, here we have Kerry. I think this is a great picture. Now, if I can work out how to do this, as you know, I'm a complete idiot when it comes to IT. So on the inside pages here, we have the usual list of contributors, people that have helped with the magazine, who without these people here, we couldn't do it. I really need to give a shout out to Cezanne, especially, and also to BS Designs, because they do pretty much the lion's share of all the hard work. I get to do the easy bit, and they have to then check everything that I do. I'd forgotten about this blockety blocked thing. I've for some reason I keep forgetting to use it. And the idea was that at the end of everything that I'd written, I was going to put blockety block there, but it didn't stick. I don't know why I didn't do it. And okay, this was an article that Cezanne wrote called Pride in Our Crafting History. So not only does Cezanne do all, well, not all, but a vast majority of the proofreading, and also she's doing a tech editing course at the moment. And so she's doing a lot of our tech editing for the magazine, which has been brilliant since she's been doing that. But not only that, she actually writes as well occasionally, and she's a good writer. So this is sort of more of a personal history of the knitting and crochet in her family. I think it's knitting and crochet, I think. And I'm not going to go into huge detail there, but it's actually really, really interesting. And I don't know about other people, but for me, I'm quite, because I did a lot of genealogy a few years ago and looked at the ancestry site and so on. I'm really into family trees, and I find other people's family trees just as interesting as my own, which is a bit odd. But anyway, so these are some of her family members, and these are some of the items that some of her family members have made. And at least I think some of the family members made. If she's watching, she can correct me. Now, on the right, oh, I'm still recovering from my man flu, by the way. So I'm still going to cough. I'm still very congested. So I'm sorry, but deal with it. There's not a lot I can do. You know, everyone knows man flu is the worst illness in the entire world. But I'm still, I'm still struggling through it like a true hero. But anyway. Then we had the Shark Week Challenge. Wow, it feels so long ago since we did this. This was organised by Anne Pinkover and Deplorable Knitter over at Politically Incorrect Knitters. And it was a week-long knitting and crochet challenge where you had to finish the item you knit or crochet within that week. Otherwise, you had to unravel the entire thing and show it on camera. Now, I don't think that many people failed. I think most people actually succeeded in doing it, because there's something about having to rip out your work that is incredibly, what's the word? It's a really good motivator, put it that way. Now, at the bottom here, you can see all of the sponsors who took part. I'd like to just point out that none of the sponsors paid $2,500 to be part of this. Although we did all put a little bit of money in towards stickers and prizes and things like that. So that was great. And I hope Anna and DK do this every year, because it's the only make along that I have actually taken part in, because sometimes they're a little bit too long for me and I get bored easy. Now we have a lovely pattern here by a New Zealand designer called Callum, and it's called the Hurricane Slouch. And modeling it is Morgan, who does a lot of our test knitting. And I believe Cezanne did the two hats on the right hand side of the page. I think she did those as well, because we test a lot of the patterns. We don't test all of them, but we do test a lot of the patterns that get submitted, and often it's so that we can get different photos as well. Excuse me. An advert there for Karen Hooley Designs, and Karen hopefully will be joining me possibly in December, maybe November. I'm not quite sure yet. We've been talking for a few months now, and there's a little something that's in the pipeline that I'm quite excited about with Karen, who, if you haven't watched Karen Hooley's videos, you should, because she's, especially if you're into crochet, she knits as well, but she mostly teaches about crochet, and she's written quite a number of books now. I've got one of them, which is So You Think You Can Crochet, but for the life of me, I don't know where it is. And her show actually is really good. It's she's very sort of conversational, and I keep missing them live. It's because of the time difference, but I only end up watching them after the event, which is a shame, because I think she does a lot of giveaways, and I think she does a giveaway every episode. And her lives, not that many people watch live. People tend to watch it afterwards. So you've got a really good chance of winning the prize if you watch live, because there might only be about 30 people watching live. So much better odds. Okay, this is the Dissident, and I have no idea which one it was. No idea. Once I've done, I keep saying this, but once an issue is done and it's out in the world, I do tend to erase it from my head. And I don't know whether that's normal or whether it's a coping mechanism. I'm not sure. So when things come up, it's like, oh, yeah, I'd forgotten about that. So it's almost like I'm seeing it for the first time sometimes. So I have no idea what that Dissident was. So if anybody's knitted it, let us know. Now, so this was the sort of main crux of this issue, and it's all about the pussy hat. So a few people will be spitting now when they hear that. And what we wanted to do with this was, we were kind of a bit annoyed that, well, not annoyed, but a little bit peeved that they'd stolen this design to make into a political movement. And way back when, I can't remember the exact date, all the details are in this article, Andre Sue, of Andre Sue Knits, Andy of Andre Sue Knits, I should say. She made a design, which is it in here? Is the picture here? This little drawing at the bottom here in blue, that's based on her original design that she did, and it was kind of what's the word? Hijacked by the Pussy Hat movement, and something like 14,000 or 16,000, some number in that amount, were 16,000 people knitted her design. And she kind of felt a little bit odd about it, because I don't think she was angry about it. I think she was just sort of confused that all these people would use her pattern when she didn't necessarily feel the same way they did. And it became this sort of evil movement, as we now know. So I thought, you know what? I've got 3 ugly cats. I'm going to redesign her original design and create 3 different hats. And the design ended up being very different to her original design, because her original one was for a child, I believe. I think it was an 80 stitch circumference, and I can't remember. It's in the pattern, you'll see in a second, but I had to make it bigger because I wanted to do it for an adult. And I did 3 different versions, and each one represents one of my cats. Now you can see the 3 hats here flat, and so the black one represents Inca, the grey and white one represents North Star, and the sort of tabby coloured one represents my cat Ollie. And I asked Awenith Yarns if she would dye the yarn for me, and she did. So these are all her yarns. And then I got together. I found 3 people willing to knit them. So the black cat was knitted by Tabitha, who's in the chat now, Murder Knits. Oh, I've forgotten who did Tara. I think Tara knitted the tabby one, I think. Ollie. And sorry, do you know, my mind has gone completely blank. I can't remember who knitted the North Star hat. Please let yourselves know, make yourselves known if you're in the chat. I'm really sorry. I meant to check that before I came online and I completely forgot. Yeah, Tara did one, definitely. So Tara, I think Tara did the sort of gingery coloured one. Right, I've lost the screen now. Where's it gone? You can see I'm rubbish at this, can't you? And okay, right. So then we decided between us that we were going to give the hats as a gift to our friend Kerry, because I know Kerry does have a bit of a story about the pussy hat. I'm pretty certain she does, and I'm hoping she'll come on to talk about it. So we sent them to her, and she was absolutely thrilled. And when I said, would you model them and hopefully we'll get a cover out of it and so on, she really ran with it, and her husband had a really good time doing it. I think they were at some music festival when they did it. So I'm sure there were a few people there that thought she was wearing a pussy hat, but I don't think anyone will have ever have had a pussy hat like these before. So they were all done. I think they were all done with charts. I don't think I did written instructions for these, and they're all original designs. So this is North Star. So the idea of this chart, there's actually 2 charts. So you had a choice of how you did it. You could have just done one side with either one of these designs and knitted the other side plain if you wanted to. You'd have to carry all the floats, so obviously. You could have knitted one of these both, so it was the same on both sides, or you could knit one on one side and one on the other side, which is what this ended up being here. And I love this one. I absolutely love this one because it's my colors, you see, so I'm drawn to it. Then we had the Ollie hat. Now this one, when I first designed it, I wasn't sure whether it was going to work because I kind of felt, if you look here, I felt like it was a little bit ugly until I thought, well, actually, no, it reminds me of some kind of sort of ancient stone carving, a little bit like Easter Island or something, except for a cat. And when it was knitted, I think it was beautifully knitted as well. And there's a really nice... what do we call it? It's like a double moss stitch type thing. I can't remember the name of the pattern now, but that's on the back, and it just gives it this great texture. And the yarn just worked perfectly with it because although there's a lot going on in the yarn, I like that kind of mottled effect that the texture and the yarn together gave, because that's kind of what those tabby cats look like, isn't it? Well, at least to me. And here's the other thing about Kerry. What I loved about it is that not only did she sort of take the idea of being a model and run with it, she changed outfits for each hat. She set the scene as well. I can't remember whether... we haven't got it. There was an absolutely brilliant photo where somewhere around near where she lives, there's an old toilet and they've turned it into a planter. And it just looked brilliant. But the problem was when we tried to use it, because we wanted to use it as the cover, we couldn't get it to work. And whatever we did with that picture, it just didn't work in this context. But it was a brilliant picture. It was absolutely great. Now we'll come to the black hat. Now there's a bit of a story with the black hat, because Tabitha did the black hat, and for those who know that I'm an extremely tight knitter, Tabitha is my complete opposite. Tabitha is the loosest knitter on the planet. I'm telling you, she really is. You could throw yourself at one of Tabitha's knits and you would go through the pearls, I'm telling you. She knitted the black hat, and when it arrived, it didn't really fit Kerry, but it was the only one that would fit her husband, Anthony. So this is her husband, Anthony, here. So he modelled it as well. So it was a little bit too baggy for Kerry, but that's Tabitha's loose. Tabitha's a loose woman. And then here we have the chart for the black hat. And this one is the easiest one to knit, and it would have been very easy to adapt as well. There's a little bit of two-stitch cabling. I forgot what that's called, traveling cables. But you could have ignored those and done pearls instead if you wanted to. And then the eyes are actually duplicate stitch. So you just need a tiny little bit of green or yellow. And the nose is just made with pearl stitches. So when you look at the photos, you can't really see those details much. But when you look at them close up on the real thing, you can. Well, I think you can, because obviously Tabitha knitted it, so she'll have to attest to that. And here's our usual ads. Now, I've completely forgotten what this is about. Now, I think the article is about procrastinating. I think the clue is in the title. I'll leave it at that. I know I enjoyed it when I read it, and I know a few people said that it was quite funny. There was something quite humorous about it. But time has gone. Time has passed, and I just can't remember, so I'm sorry about that. Let me go back. Now, this is a really nice pattern. I'll just put this on. Is that you trying to excuse the looseness there, Tabitha? Because you can't see. And that's what you get for calling me loose. Ha! Right, let me get back to this. So this hat is called Statuesque, and it's by Millie. Do you know, I can't even read it. Millie's done a few patterns for us, I think, over the last year or so, and her patterns are really, really nice. There's a simplicity to them and kind of a bit of an elegance to them that I think is really, really nice, and that's a really sweet hat. That. Anyway, moving on. This is. I really like these book reviews, and again, it's by Kathleen. Who, do you know? I can't believe I didn't realize this is the same lady who her username, I think, is Katie. So that's why I didn't make the connection. She's somebody that stood up to Adela recently, and Adela then sort of had people attacking her online. And I didn't make the connection that she's written for the magazine and she does the book reviews. So sorry about that, Kathleen, Katie, whichever you prefer. Your reviews are really good. This one is about two books which were about sort of bigger knits for fat people. And this was a pattern that was given to me by Anna Knitter over in Germany. And for what was the reason? Yeah, that was it. It was because there'd been such a long gap between, I think, issue 8 and issue 9, or was this I can't remember now. There was a big gap anyway, and the idea was that this was going to be in the Christmas issue last year. For some reason it didn't go. I can't remember, but then I realized it's always winter somewhere, isn't it? Well, it was winter in Australia, so we can put a hot water bottle cover in at any time. And then we have the trellis crochet shawl. This is quite cool. This is one of those. Do they call it planned pooling? Is that what they call it? Or is it? No, it's not planned pooling. Is it directed pooling? It's something like that. I can't remember. And the idea is that you have to have yarn that has just a burst of colour at one point on it, so that you can get quite a long stretch of knitting or crochet done before you get to this burst of color, and then you do something different like a bobble or those dip stitches like Stephen West did. Liz Clothier said it's assigned pooling. Yeah, so this was the one here that's on the mannequin on the right. This was the original, and then I asked Morgan if she would do a test knit of it, because what I wanted to do, we had the written instructions, but I also wanted there to be a chart instructions as well. And I have promised Liz Clothier, that at some point I'm going to do a video on how to read crochet charts, because it's actually really, really simple once you know how. So this chart is enough to knit an entire shawl. So that's how simple the charts can be. The idea is once you follow this pattern, you can keep going, you know, forever and ever and ever, you know, until you decide. So what always happens, usually, not always, I'll do a little bit of this chart now, but not enough to help you with other charts. But usually there'll be a tiny little arrow. So I don't know whether you can see my mouse moving there. And that's where you'll start. So with this one, you could have done either what's called a magic circle, or you could have maybe chained 4 to make a circle. So crocheters will know what I'm talking about now. Then you chain 4. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 chains there. And that creates a double crochet and 1 chain. Hope that makes sense. And then you move over. That's a double crochet. Then it's a chain. Then a double crochet, a chain, a double crochet, and so on until you get to here. And then usually where you see these chains, where you know, it signifies sort of the next level and bring the height up to where you need it. That's where you're going to go next. So you start at the circle, you go up the chain, you go across, think of snakes and ladders, and then you go down here, you'll do another chain here, and then you work that way. And then here, this is where you increase. So if you were, you know, you have to increase at least 2 times on each side of a shawl, generally, not always. And then you just follow it around. And once you've learned how to do one, you can do them all. And when I come to show you how to do it, I'm gonna work out how I can explain it better, because I'm just doing it off the cuff at the moment. But I'll do it on a PowerPoint slideshow so you can see each section in a different color, and you'll only see each bit of it as you need to do it, sort of, you know, as if it's like on the screen. And my theory, I talked to a few people about this. I think it was on Knit Night, I think. And we talked about this. And I have a theory, no idea if it's true. But I think that people that struggle with charts for crochet are also people that would struggle reading a map in a car, you know, the old-fashioned map where you'd have to, you know, you see most men, for example, would look at a map and in their mind they turn it around and they know where they're going that way. Whereas many women, and this isn't any kind of, I'm not dissing women, it's just something that is observable and people have noticed, many women would have to actually physically turn the map to face the direction that they want to go in. And I think crochet charts are the same, because you move around a crochet chart, whereas with a knitting chart it stays static generally and you just follow it backwards and forwards, whereas with a crochet one you're having to move around, especially if it's a circle. And I think that is one of the reasons. Oh yeah, I've got a couple of people here saying they can't read a map to save their lives yet. So I think my theory is correct. I might be correct there. But I love them. And the thing is about them is you can get the most complex patterns in the tiniest space once you know how to read a crochet chart. Because the thing is, when you're looking at it, it's almost a drawing of the finished object. Because that is exactly, you know, these are crochet, you know, it's a double crochet. If you know in your mind what a double crochet is. And often people say things like, oh, I can't remember all the symbols. Well, I call bullshit on that, because if you can remember what a K is and what an L is, and you can remember what an SKP, I can't remember myself now, an SK, if you can remember what a K2 together is, then you could do this as well. We have, we got a Clever Clogs. She can do anything. She can read both maps and charts, but then she's British and we're clever. I'm joking, by the way. Watch everyone go off now. So that was the trellis crochet shawl, and I really enjoyed doing that chart. But another thing about charts is I wanted to start doing a lot more crochet charts, but the problem is the software to do the charts. It's a skill entirely of its own thing. It like, as you can see here, it isn't very, you know, it's a little bit wonky, and I just could not get it to line up. And I think you need to have special skills, special graphic design skills to be able to do it. So I don't know how it'll look. Excuse me, how it would look if I just carry on doing it. Anyway, I'm waffling. Okay, then we have the drama. So there's always a drama, isn't there? And this was, it wasn't a knitting drama for a change, and it was the peacock dress. Now, this was a lady, I think she was British. Well, do you know, I can't even remember now where she was from. I think she might have been British. And she had kind of devoted 10 years of her life to recreating the dress that was worn by, oh, do you know, I've forgotten the woman's name. What was she called? Lady Curzon. That was it. There we go. I knew I'd named her here. So Lady Curzon. She was quite a high-ranking British I don't know what you'd call her really. She was married to what was he called? Lord Curzon, but he was sort of the boss of India when the British Raj was happening. So they were like second to Queen Victoria in India. So she was the most powerful woman within that whole area. And because she was part of the British Empire and therefore colonial, these people started to attack the lady that was recreating the dress. Now, the thing is, there's a lot of hatred towards British people and the British Empire. And I think some people think that I'm obviously defending it because I'm British. But the thing is, the British Empire did so much good around the world that people do not realize. Yes, there were some bad things that were happening, and some of the bad things were absolutely horrific. But in the grand scheme of things, the British Empire was probably the best empire that there ever was. Probably on a par, if you think about the Roman Empire. Yes, it was awful what the Romans did to some people, but also look what the Romans gave to the world in terms of roads, in terms of hygiene, in terms of government, the way they had the Senate and so on and so forth. Not all empires are bad, and pretty much every continent has had its own empire, and some of them have been a hell of a lot worse than the British Empire. Now, the thing about Lady Curzon, who knows? We don't know whether she was horrible to Indian people, but the evidence suggests that she wasn't. The evidence suggests that she loved the Indian people. She loved Indian culture. And something I've found out since writing this article is that at the time of the Victorians, when the Victorians went into India, their culture had all but disappeared. They didn't even know what their culture was. And because the Victorians were so into their sort of history, they loved the Egyptian stuff. They were always going, digging up graves in Egypt, weren't they? They wanted to find out more about the Indian culture, and they completely revived it and revitalized it. And by getting this dress made, Lady Curzon employed hundreds of dressmakers, Indian dressmakers. She only used Indian fabrics. These people may have been working for a pittance, but it was a pittance more than they had beforehand. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's like now our T-shirts, for example, we know they're probably made in sweatshops somewhere in India or Africa, but those people without that wouldn't have any income at all. So it's a difficult conundrum, really. But what she did wasn't a bad thing, and she was showing Indian craftsmanship to the world, because the Victorians absolutely loved India. They truly did love it. They loved everything about it. They loved the people, they loved the food, they loved the designs that were coming out of India. Everything about it was so, I don't want to say exotic for fear of them doing a Karen Templar on me, but the British Victorians really loved their foreign cultures. The whole Chinese culture thing. There was hundreds and thousands of Chinese people in Victorian Britain. Anyway, waffle. So basically, this lady that had spent over £10,000 and 10 years of her life on this dress, trying to recreate it. And I think the idea was that it was going to be shown in all sorts of different places, because the original is in one place and they won't move it. Whereas her replica would probably have sort of done a tour everywhere. Oh, Tabitha. That's because you all have no culture but beans on toast. Whatever. Anyway. Well, she's not wrong. Anyway. I've lost my train of thought now. I can't remember what I was going to say. So anyway, they bullied this lady into stopping doing the design. But although there were some people saying that she wanted out of the project anyway because she'd spent too much money and too much time, and there was more money to spend that she didn't have. But anyway, at the end of the day, I was kind of quite angry about it because I thought, who are these people to? Because what they were second generation Indian people that were living in America or wherever, claiming some right of ownership over Indian culture. Now, I know that there wouldn't be any Indian in India that would have a problem with this. They would be proud of their heritage being remade and reshown because that's Indian skill. It's not British skill, it was Indian skill. But the second generation people always are the ones that have an issue with these things. And it's because they don't have that connection anymore to their home, to the homeland. So therefore they have to kind of somehow grab onto it and find anybody else doing anything to do with that culture offensive in some way. But it's ridiculous anyway. So I decided, right, that's it. I'm going to design 2 cowls, not just 1, 2. So this was the peacock dress cowl that I designed. And this one has got beads in it. It's the first time I've ever done anything with beads in. And the beads are here. I don't know if you can see. The bits that are in sort of bluey turquoise are beads. And the whole thing is done with 2x2 cables. And it's actually quite an enjoyable knit. I was a bit worried about doing it because I just felt it was really complicated. But it isn't that complicated once you get into the swing of it. And here we go. This was one. The lady who knitted the North Star hat also knitted this for me. And I can't remember her name. Sorry, her name's gone. If she's watching, please let me know. And she did a really good job. And you can just about see the beads there in the heart shape there. I like the idea that it would just kind of glisten a little bit in the light. And then, not to be content with just one, I decided to knit or design a second one as well. So luckily I actually have that one here now. So this is the smaller of the 2 designs. Let me see if oops. Oh, there's an end I haven't weaved in. So let me just move this, and I'll do. So this is the Lady Curzon cowl. I don't know how well that's showing up, but there's a tiny bit of colour work, and these bobbles that are in blue on here, they're optional. So, like, if you were going to knit this in a flesh colour or a pink colour, you might not want to do it because, as Tabitha and Amy say from Two Sisters, it would look like a nipple or 2 nipples if it was that way. On the other side, there are 3. And the design it's not the same design, but it's both of the cowls are supposed to represent the feathers that are on the peacock dress, whereas one goes up and down, this one goes horizontally. So the other one goes vertically, this one goes horizontally. So hopefully you can kind of see there. One is easy. This one is much easier to knit than the other one, and it's a little bit more what's the word when you can remember what you're doing? There's a word for it, isn't there, when you remember a certain stitch pattern? Whereas I don't think the other one is. That's a little bit complicated. Why is everyone talking about black pudding in the comments? Is that because that's a British dish? Yeah, that's all we eat in Britain is black pudding, which is blood pudding, and baked beans. We don't have any other food. Right, so let me put that back. There we go. So now, what are we up to? So this is that's the cowl that I knitted there. That's my mum. We had to hide her face because she's so hideous. No, I'm joking. And the green one is the test knit that Morgan did for me, which was great. And that is in the yarn. She did tell me. Is it in there? Oh, I can't remember. I don't know whether it's Chicken Lady. Actually, I'm not sure. No, I don't know. Can't remember. And then these are the charts. So the charts were quite big. And the problem with these charts is the repeat was too big for me to just have a little bit that you repeat. It wouldn't have worked. So I had to put the entire thing on over multiple pages. So I don't know whether there was a better way of doing that, but I'm sure there was. And yeah, so then I've started to put more deadlines in, which I wish I hadn't now, because we never ever stick to the deadlines. Yeah, because what are we now? We're almost in November, aren't we? So we've missed that deadline. And the new deadline is actually November the 15th. So I'm going to have to stop doing that. That's silly. So that was issue 1. Issue 9, I apologize. So I don't know whether anyone has got any questions about that. I'll just have a quick look in the comments. When I've got the issue on the screen, I can't see the comments because it kind of covers it. So let's have a quick look. Oh no, they're all just dissing British culture. So disrespectful. I don't know. Anyway, right. So now it's on to issue 10. Now, the funny thing about issue 10 is that this cover, this is Morgan. So Morgan does a lot of the test knitting, and Morgan's got her own YouTube show. The name of which now I'm not sure, because she had to relaunch it, and I don't know, I can't remember what it's called now. So forgive me there, Morgan. But this cover has ended up being the most controversial cover of the entire series so far, and it's because she's pulling her tongue out. Now, I didn't know that in America it's a lot of older, sort of my age and above, a lot of older people find people who stick the tongues out really offensive, and we don't have that here. It's kind of just a bit of a cheeky, childish thing that kids do generally. It's kind of like a bit of, oh, shut up kind of thing. You know, it doesn't really mean anything. So when this came out, I actually lost 4 patrons over this picture. And, well, I think I lost 2 for certain over the picture. 2 others, it was just coincidentally on the same day. So I'm not really sure. But yeah, so I did have someone contact me and say they weren't happy about this. I mean, they were very polite about it and whatever, but then I just referred them back to the very first issue where I said that at some point everyone is going to be offended by Block Magazine, because I don't tend to hold back. You know, I do tend to say what I think. So, you know, it's just one of those things. So, and this issue has been the lowest read issue of the entire series as well. So I do think there must be something in that, you know, or maybe Morgan scaring them all off, because there was on, I don't know where it was now, but Morgan told us on either Knitting Wars or Knit Night, I think it was Knit Night, that someone thought it was a certain Dr. K. I can't think of a name. Karlin Borisenko. And obviously, this is not Karlin. So, poor Morgan. Yeah, so this is issue 10. Now, the background is, excuse me, the cover of Number Knitting. So when I get to the Number Knitting pages, I'm kind of going to skip over those quite quickly, because I've got Kelly coming on Friday on Tour Live. And Kelly is the expert on this book, and she's going to talk through it, and I've got lots of questions for her, and you need to watch. Well, you don't need to do anything, but it'd be really good if you watch that one, because I think you'll learn quite a lot. So yet again, these are the list of our contributors, and no idea what I wrote here. I'm not going to go through that, because when it's on my screen, it's too small for me to see. But I look like I was... what I can see is that I've introduced the themes. So I've started doing themes for each issue. No idea whether people like it or not. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that it gives either a bit of coherence to the entire issue, or at least give some inspiration for people who don't know what to design or don't know what to write about, and then they can interpret these themes any way they want. And at the moment, I've been using song titles. However, from January's one is going to be Murder Mystery, but that's in support of Amy of Two Sisters. She's doing a whole project to do with Murder Mystery, so I don't know what it will be beyond that. But if anyone's got any ideas for future themes, let me know, because I'll always use them. I'm always looking for inspiration myself. Sorry, I'm bunged up. I can feel myself getting more and more congested, so deal with it. Right, so now this is a new thing that I've been doing. I found a resource of really old newspapers. Now, anyone can access this. You do have to pay a subscription, though, to access it. And I just thought, I can't remember why I got it. There was something I was doing independently of the knitting world. I don't know whether it was, what was it to do with? Can't remember. I think it was family tree stuff. You know, I think there's a story out there somewhere where it got in the papers and I wanted to double check something. And then I just thought, I wonder what's in there about knitting. Well, anyway, the stuff about knitting from the olden days is like incredible. And this story, I just thought I have to reprint this because we're always talking about knitting scams, you know, the whole Lady Di stuff where people don't receive the yarn that they've paid for. And we kind of think that this is a new thing. Sezzy just said, I was looking up Virginia Woods Bellamy. That's right, exactly. That's what it was. I'll get to that shortly. And this person in this story was advertising for knitters, and she was going to pay them so that they could work from home. And the real advert is, I can't see this, so it's too small, but it's one of these newspaper articles here, the real advert that it's this one here at the bottom. That is a screenshot of the real advert that they placed. But what they were doing, they would then send them so much wool for this small item, either a baby's jacket or whatever, and they might pay them for that first job that they did. And then when the people then sent a deposit of X amount of money, it's all in old English money, so we don't even know what that means now. But then they never received anything. Or what they would say is they would send them the wool and it would be knitted and the person would send the item back, but then they wouldn't pay for it and they would say that it wasn't up to standard or that it smelt, somebody had worn it or whatever. And it was a massive thing. They were doing it all over the country. Loads and loads of people fell for this scam. And it's, as with all these scams, it's infuriating because the people that fall for it are usually people who are poor. You know, most people, we all know that you can't make a living knitting. You know, people who are knitting from home are people that trying to make money doing it from home are clearly people that can't work in any other way to make that kind of money. And the money is so trivial, it's like, it's not really worth doing. But in the end, I couldn't find if this person was sort of dealt with properly, but the business was folded and the creditors did end up there. But I wanted to put that in just to show that knitting has attracted scammers for years, so at least like 90 years anyway, according to this. And I think if people like reading some of these old stories, I am going to publish more. There's a lot of stuff. I'm not sure how I'm going to get around this one though, because it's a little bit upsetting, but the amount of children that died falling on knitting needles is unbelievable. I was shocked. There was story after story after story, and I kept thinking, why was this so prevalent? And one, obviously, more every woman in every household, and some men as well, because, you know, especially in places like Yorkshire, all knitted. And they would have used either those long double-pointed needles that were probably very fine, or they would have used those, well, they are those, aren't they? You know, the ones where you have that pouch thing where they stab it into the pouch. Well, they would have been double-ended needles, and they're probably much sharper than the ones that we might use, whatever Chowgu might say, or higher. But there were so many of them, and I was just thinking, why was it so common? And obviously people were knitting more, and kids were running around perhaps and tripping. But then I was thinking, were some of these kids murdered, you know, and then they pretended that they'd ran and fell on it? I mean, there's one horrific story of a young girl at school. They must have taught knitting at school, and she ended up with a wooden needle stuck in the back of her throat. And the headmaster of the school pulled it out. But then when she went home, she ended up dying. And presumably she must have got sepsis or something. But I wanted to sort of include it somehow as a little bit of a, not a warning, but, you know, just be careful with your needles. I mean, I don't know how dangerous most of our circular needles would be, because I think most of us use those. But I do know some people use, you know, long, straight needles. But they are weapons, you know. So I'm going to talk about a lot more things to it, because there are some brilliant stories. some crimes that aren't as gruesome as sort of the children dying, impaled on knitting needles. But there are some quite funny crimes that have occurred with knitting needles, and I think people will enjoy them. Here's another. I will not be trying this with my long Shetland needles. Well, luckily there's no children in your house, I don't think, Anne. So, but keep Molly away. Where's it go? So now we've got this. This was new on me. I had never heard of candy corn rats or candy corn anything. I had no idea what it was. So Cezanne wanted, I don't know whether she'd already designed this or whether she wanted to do the design, but she said, "Oh, I want to do a candy corn rat," and I was like, "Well, I've no idea what that is." And she said, "Well, it's quite divisive," and I was like, "Oh Christ, what's this about? What now?" And it seems that you either love or hate these things. She's in the comments. Suzanne says she designed it for her niece last year, so she must have made these as toys for her niece, but then wrote up the pattern for the magazine. But it's what's really funny. And Anne, she says she's eating candy corn right now. So what? I don't know what the corn bit is. So I'm assuming that it's corn on the cob with sugar on it. Therese says it's crayons with sugar on them. So it's not even real corn. Oh God. They sound hideous. I don't know. But what's been really funny though, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but since this was published, a certain yarn dyer in Georgia who is always angry and always crying victim has been making a massive deal about how much she hates candy corn things. And I just wonder how much of that is brand new and how much of that is because of us publishing this. Diana says it's just shaped like corn. The candy pumpkins are better. You have to send me one, somebody. I cannot imagine what it's like. Well, is it like a toffee apple? Oh, then again, no. There's no actual corn in it, is there? It's just pretend, isn't it? But anyway, so Suzanne did a really cool little pattern. They remind me of The Clangers, which was a British TV show, and we talked about it in one of our forums once because they were knitted. The Clangers were actually knitted toys, and they had these big sort of noses, and they lived on the moon, and they were really cute. They didn't speak; they all sort of did this sort of weird mousy kind of noise, and I wish Americans knew more about the Clangers because I think you would all knit one if you knew more about them. But they're very much like this. So then we had, this was another article, but again, I thought this was interesting. It's from the 30s, I think it was. Is it 1930? I can't quite see the date. And it was from Ireland. And it was about the noise of knitting needles in the theatre when they were trying to, watch shows. And I just thought it was quite funny because I just thought, we have people complain, when you go, if you're at work and you go to a meeting, I've heard people saying about going to church and knitting and people sort of giving them the side eye. But we all know that as knitters that we actually absorb things better when we're knitting at the same time as listening to something. But to other people, it looks like we're completely ignoring what they're doing and focusing on what's in our hands. But that isn't the case. But part of this was more about the noise of those needles. And I think it's probably because of the speed that these knitters, because we've apart from Tabitha, the fastest, loosest knitter in the world, we have slowed down with knitting, I think. But again, it's probably because we have more leisure time, whereas back then they didn't have any leisure time, so they were faster. And I think that is probably why the noise was so much. Karen Hooley again. Karen Hooley is advertised. She does. I've been debating whether to do it. I might do it, but I'm not bad at crochet, so I don't know how much I need to learn more. But she does do online classes, and you can sign up for those by if you look at this link here. Okay, Dissident 12. I think this one, yes, this is the most complicated Dissident I've ever done. And yes, it's probably very complicated to knit as well. I'm not going to say what it is, but I really enjoyed that one. I thought it was quite cool. And then we got another article about books. This isn't by the same lady who does the book reviews. This is more about banned books in general. So it's quite interesting, and it's very current, because like at the moment there's still schools, you know, showing weird books, and the debate as to whether we should be banning you know, sexual content from youngsters' books. And I mean, I know some people would say you should never ban a book, but I would still argue there should be age restrictions, you know, appropriate age restrictions on certain books. And there's one in particular that I downloaded to read because I'd heard a lot about it, and it's called Gender Queer, I think it's called, and it's supposed to be aimed at like what we would call primary kids and you would call kindergarten kids, I think. And it's there's full of sexual content. I mean, I was shocked, you know, and not a lot shocks me really. But anyway, so that's what that's about. There's lots and lots of references there, so it's very, very well researched as well. And then this is a pattern that I've been. I tend to design patterns in my head for quite a long time before I ever put it down on paper, and I kind of have them moving around in my head and whether I think they would work or not. This is. I can't remember which issue it was, but the shawl that Tabitha is test knitting for me, which she's been test knitting for about 17 years, is based on the Fibonacci code. And without, you know, patting myself on the back too much, I think I'm the first person to ever use the Fibonacci code to knit a curve into anything. I've not found it anywhere else. Now, I'm sure it's out there because, like we say, there's nothing new under the sun. But for some reason, people tend to use the pi theory for circles, which is great, but for dome shapes the Fibonacci code works much better. So if you think of things like your sleeve cap on your arm, on your head, and even one thing I'm going to try doing a yoke using the same principle to see whether a yoke will work, because it's kind of a dome over your shoulders. And now I'm not sure whether this one will, so it's all things that I'm designing in my head. But this was so this golden ratio cowl is based on the Fibonacci code, but in a different way. So this isn't about creating a curve, although if you were drawing this in the correct manner, if you look here on these diagrams, you see the red lines. They're kind of creating a spiral, but here they're at right angles to each other. Whereas if you were doing it properly, they would curve perfectly and it would be a perfect spiral. And that's kind of how you create a spiral or a dome shape. Perfectly, that is, every time. However, doing it in knitting, it would be very difficult to make it curve. I'm sure it's possible, and maybe one day someone will do that, but I've the amount of working it out isn't worth, you know, what it will look like to me. So this is a mitered square project. So this is great if you like doing mitered square blankets and things like that, but you're sick of doing the same type. So I've got the cowl here. I'm going to show you because the picture doesn't show the entire thing. And it's double-sided. Well, I say double-sided. There's a front and a back to it. So let me make sure I've got this right. So the idea is, I need to make myself bigger, don't I? No, that's it. So the idea is, you see the yellow square there? That's where you start. And you start with 20 stitches, sorry, and you do a mitered square. But you do I didn't do this to make things difficult, but you do it on the purl side rather than on the knit side. And there's a reason for that, because it gives you a slightly raised knit stitch along that middle edge, the middle part of it, you know, along the miter bit, and that's so you can crochet into it at a later date. So once you do the first yellow square, then you do exactly the same with the blue square. And this is to replicate the Fibonacci code, which is 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 11, and so on. I can't remember it all off the top of my head now. And each one of the squares is, you can work it out based on the fib. And I know I've lost people already. I know the moment you start talking about anything maths, people are like, ooh, not interested. But to me, it's fascinating because I knew that this would work before I even picked up the needles. I knew it would work perfectly. Because as we know, if you do a mitered square and garter stitch, the 2 rows which create a ridge is the same as the as one stitch in, the width and height. It works itself out, so it's square. And the idea is that you do 2, and so you can have slightly different on each side. Now, originally I didn't like the red. I wanted to have something a little bit more subtle. I was probably going to go with this dark grey colour, but you all talked me out of it, and I actually really like it now. And it's I like it. It's cool. And the yarn is West Yorkshire West Yorkshire Spinners, and it's Elemental or Elements, I think it's called. So it's really soft, and it's got like a really nice drape to it. It's 50% wool and 50% something I've never heard of before. So I don't know what it is, but it's kind of a little bit shiny as well. So that was that cowl. And now I'm going to show you the other one straight away because it's the same pattern. You just do something slightly different. Now this one is a little bit taller, but it's exactly the same principle, except you do 1 square more. So I'm going to hold it that way. So and I did it using more neutral colors, but hopefully you can see they're slightly different. There's grays and blues in there. But then this one on the back, this is the biggest one. And I used multiple colors in this one. I don't think it's showing up on the screen very well, but if you look closely, you can see that there's different colors in it. And this one I did with a mohair mixed with it. And so it's much sort of taller, but again, it works. It's perfectly fine. You could even put this one over your head like that, which and it works. It's big enough to do that. So if it was in red with white, it would be very Santa, wouldn't it? Maybe I should do one. Have I got time for Christmas? Yeah. So, and this one's lovely because I mixed it with a mohair as well. So it's this one is Holst Garn. Now, when I started knitting it, I was using their cotton. It's a cotton and lamb's wool mix, I think it is. But my criticism of it when you're knitting with it is that there's no give because of the cotton. It was really sort of like, and I kept thinking, I'm not sure this is going to work, which is why I put the mohair with it. But after I washed it and blocked it, I'm not kidding, this is the softest thing ever. And I think that's the trick with Holst yarn. I think Tabitha's mentioned that to me before, is that after you've knitted it and you block it, it really kind of blooms and goes quite cool. We've got people saying it's nice and lovely. Yeah, please knit it. Please knit it and show us. Because I don't know whether anyone's ever knitted it from seeing it in the magazine. I'm not sure. Okay, so that was the so these are the or what do you call them, schematic, so you can kind of see. So the idea with this is that the grey one at the top is one side of the first cowl, and the yellow and blue one is the other side, and you seam them down. You do have to seam them down the sides, and then at the very end you crochet the red sort of spiral into it. Now the great thing about, I say because I designed it, the great thing about my pattern, what I love about it is that you can keep going. I've put all the math in there for you. Oh, listen to me say math instead of maths. I'm turning American. You could make this into a massive blanket, but bear in mind that every square is going to be bigger than the last, and you're going to but the grey one, hello, sorry, I'm reading this and nobody knows what I'm talking about. Hello Angel says, seams, forget it. On the grey one, there's only one seam, so it's much easier. And you can do seams, you can crochet them together, or you can do a double thingy bind off, what's it called? Double needle bind off. Get over yourself, come on, do it, you need to learn. So anyway, so the pattern, you can keep going and keep going to the end of time. But the thing, when Morgan and I were knitting the second cowl, the grey one, and she did hers in greens and blues, because you're starting off with a very small square and then building up, that very last one, that sixth, I think it was the sixth one, it was a bit of a killer, but then I think, well, why was it a killer? Because it's only garter stitch, and often we knit far more garter stitch than that. But I think it's because you want it to be done. At that point, you want to see it finished, and it just felt like it was never going to end. So what I would advise, if you do make one of these, or if you do turn it into a blanket, I would definitely use all your mini skeins and, try and have some colour to keep your interest, because it's just garter stitch. It's just garter stitch, garter stitch, garter stitch. I have been toying with the idea of doing other designs using mitered squares, but using mitered squares with patterns in them. Because there's not many people that have done anything with that, and there's so much potential as to what you can do with mitered squares. And I have found out how you can do ribbing in a mitered square and it stays square, because if you do stockinette stitch with a mitered square, you won't end up with a square. It will end up more like an elongated diamond shape. But if you do it with ribbing, there's a way of doing it and it still comes out as a square. So I'm experimenting with that. Oops, Mr. Page. God, I'd forgotten I'd done this. I'd completely forgotten about this. At the time, just before I did this issue, there was an auction, and the black sheep sweater that Princess Diana wore twice, as far as we know, she only wore it twice, went on auction, and I can't remember the exact amount, but I think it was something like $1.4 million, I think it was sold for, which was about £1 million, I think. And the story behind this is quite interesting, because she paid a company to, it's supposedly hand knit. I think it is hand knit, actually. And I think she paid about £250 for it, or that's what it's worth now. You can still buy them fully made for £250. And she liked, and I think it was a message that she was sending to, especially for the media, so the media would know, oh, poor Diana, she's the black sheep of the family, she's, the odd one out. And then she damaged it in some way. And on one of the pictures, I don't know whether it's that sleeve there. Let me just go ahead a bit. I think it is that one. I just can't see it on the screen. But the sleeve here, there's some damage on it. There must be a hole on it, a moth hole or something. Because I do imagine that Buckingham Palace has got moths and beetles and everything, because it's so old. I can imagine it has. And she sent it back to the company and asked them if they could repair it or send her another one. And what they did was they sent her a different one back, and then she wore that a few years later, again at quite a politically apt time to show she wasn't part of the family much, and it was at the beginning of the real problems between her and Charles. And anyway, they forgot all about it, and years later, they were looking, the shop, the people that designed this and made it, were looking in the attic, and they found the original sweater that she sent back to them with letters from the palace kind of proving the story. And then they put it up for auction and made 1.4 million from a sweater. So if you can, get Kate Middleton to wear one of your sweaters and then make a hole in it, and then see if you can keep it in an attic for 40 years. So there you go. Euphoria Knits, we've got an idea. I don't know whether anybody used it, but you could have had free shipping that month. I don't know whether it's going to continue that. I don't know. I need to speak to her, actually. She does really nice yarn. I do a monthly, what do you call it? A monthly... Why do I do these lives? I can't even string a sentence together. Yarn every month. There's a word for it and I can't remember. Anyway, I buy yarn off it every month, but I never know what I'm going to get, and it's quite cool. I like it. Anyway, there you go. Our designers and indie dyers again. And right now, this is Number Knitting, and this is the book that Kelly and I are going to be talking about in depth. Thank you, Therese. Yeah, it's a subscription, a monthly yarn subscription. Oh, I've still got man flu. Yeah, you gotta forgive me. I've got man flu, and yeah, everyone's telling me now. Yeah, so Number Knitting is a book that was written in the 50s. I think it was 1953, I think it was. And this is, as far as we know, the original, the very first book that covered modular knitting. Now, I'm sure that modular knitting was a thing beforehand, but I think this was the very first time it had actually been written down in any kind of pattern format or in any way, any kind of instruction way, other than, because there are things like granny squares have been around for, centuries, haven't they? And I'm sure mitered squares of some description have been around that long, but I think she was the first person to actually put it all together. And she created a way of knitting that it's actually it's very clever. And it's limited in what you can do with it, but at the same time, it's unlimited. And it's like, how can I explain? Once you know the theory of it all and how it works, you could design some really cool things using her theories and her methods of doing things. However, when you look through the book, a lot of the designs that she did are of that time, the things that we wouldn't necessarily wear now. And you think, oh, God, that's a bit old fashioned. And it's easy to let that cloud what's actually good about the book, because 1950s fashions, if you're not into 1950s fashions, then you're not going to like them, because it was very, think Marilyn Monroe, think Sophia Loren, things were very, very low cut, everything was very fitted. And the thing about number knitting, the designs that she makes, the way you knit them, they're stretchy, they're very stretchy, so they will fit your body, but they're going to cling to your body as well. So there's a negative to it and a positive to it. Depends how you feel about your own body. But what's clever about what she does is you definitely use less yarn. You knit everything at a super loose gauge. So Tabitha, if you're still watching, this is for you, except you'd have to go down 17 needle sizes. Otherwise, there'd be like fishing nets if you knit this. And she does a lot of gauge shifting. So which isn't really that common in knitting. I mean, we do it like, for cuffs, we go down needle size and so on. But within a knitting garment, we tend to do more shaping, increasing and decreasing, whereas she does a lot of her shaping by just going up and down needle sizes. And the way she presents it is completely unique. And I've never seen it done quite like that. Although when I looked through, if anyone knows Mary Thomas was writing knitting books in the 30s, I think it was. She does do a couple of things that Virginia Woods Bellamy, who's the author of this book, I forgot to say that. So you can see where there's been like a natural progression. So these women, I think, who came before Mary Thomas, we're not quite sure. But then it was Virginia Woods Bellamy, and then it was Elizabeth Zimmerman. And you can see that they were influenced by each other. Elizabeth Zimmerman absolutely used some of these, some of the things, the baby surprise jacket. When you go through the book, this number knitting book, you think, that's where she got the idea for that. That's where she got the baby surprise jacket idea from. Now, and this is the great thing about any kind of craft, isn't it? Or any kind of skill, is that you come along and you see what's already out there, and then you build on it and create something new from that. And it's like, Stephen West now, or any of these, what we would say were great designers or good designers, however you want to say it, they didn't get their skills and their knowledge themselves. They have seen other things, and there's a path back right down, through the ages, to people that probably handed these skills down via, word of mouth. And I would love to be able to see the beginnings of it, the true beginnings of it. But anyway, this book fascinates me. And I did originally look into this because the very first time I heard about it was on Roxanne Richardson, and I looked it up, and I did have a bit of a problem because Kelly sells the PDF of the book, because the book is so rare that you're talking $400 to $600 for a copy, and you're going to get a dog-eared copy that's falling apart. It is very, very rare. There's a few in libraries. There's one copy in the UK in London that I know of in a library, but I don't think you're allowed to take it out. It's just for reference only. So hardly work, not a lot you can do there. You'd have to pay to have all the photocopies taken and so on. But the cost of this is $74.99, I think, or $75. I forget. It's within that range. And at first I was like, wow, that's expensive for a PDF for one book, but then you realize when you see what she's doing, and how generous she is as well. So she's charging that amount, but there are 74 patterns in the book. So I think part of the rationale behind charging that amount is that it's £1 a pattern, I think. And I think she is releasing these patterns on Ravelry as well, I think, one at a time. Not sure. I'd have to check on Friday with her. But then it's all of the work that she's put into it. So she's had to scan everything. And you think, oh, that's not that hard. But then what she's had to do, she's kind of, I'd rather say she's digitized it, because she's taken the graphs and the diagrams that were in the original, and she's kind of cleaned them up, because they were all hand drawn. All of the diagrams in the book are drawn with pen on paper. So she's gone through and she's made them into, done on the computer. So they're beautiful schematics, shall we say. Some of them are in color. I think they're all in color. And they're much, much easier to read and to see. So she's definitely put a hell of a lot of work into this. She's dedicated quite a few years of her life on this book. And but then at the same time, if you do a test knit, so she's trying to get all of the patterns out there and have examples of all the patterns. If you do a test knit, or if you join one of her knit alongs, because she's always got a knit along going, then she knocks huge amounts off the price of the book. So I think if you do, for every knit along you do, this may change. This is as of today, so forgive me if I'm wrong if you're watching in the future. She knocks 25% off the cost of the book for every garment that you knit, and then show her that you've knit. So presumably you get it for free, although I don't know whether she does give it away for free, but at least do 3 and you might get 75% off. But I know 25 quid is probably still a lot for a book, but the books of that era are going to cost you that much anyway. And the thing about this particular book, you're never going to find it. You will never find this for cheap anywhere. You're going to have to pay a fortune for it. But at the same time, you don't have to have the book to join in with some of the patterns, because she has some of the patterns individually. And she's also doing her own versions of things as well, where she's taking the idea and making her own patterns. And they're really interesting. And I've done the same. Have I got it here? No, I've not got it here, but I'll show it on Friday. I designed a hat based on this theory of how she does it. And I'm going to show Kelly to see whether I've done it the same way that Virginia would have done it. But anyway, I've completely waffled. But the really interesting aspect to this is that she patented her way of doing this. Oh, the cats are fighting. Sorry about this. They're directly behind the camera, and they're all right. She patented the way of knitting this, and also the way of teaching it, because the book is a tutorial from start to finish. And if you read it from the beginning, you start off very, very simply, and somebody who doesn't knit at all would be able to follow right through to the end. And the final patterns are quite complex. Now, the thing that I found, and what I wrote about here, is as a reasonably experienced knitter, you kind of think, oh, well, I don't need to do the beginning bits. I'll go to where I think, my level. But the problem is, unless you do the very beginning bits, because it's not the learning to knit bit that is the issue. It's learning her method that is the difficult bit. And if you don't learn her method first, you're going to struggle knitting later on. But the great thing is Kelly does her videos every other week. I think it is every fortnight on a Sunday afternoon. And she goes through all this and teaches everyone how to do it. And if you look, this image here on the right-hand side of the page, this black and white image, you can see we all know these shapes. We all recognize them. But Virginia kind of went beyond, and everything she designs is kind of made up of designs, like she's still alive. Everything she designed is made up of one of these shapes, and that doesn't seem that groundbreaking now, but nobody was doing that back then. Nobody was doing that at all. So here's on the left page here. Excuse me. This is one of the examples of one of the charts that Kelly has updated, and she's coloured in to make it a bit easier. Now, this is one of the simplest patterns in the book. So this is sort of, you as you go along the book, the patterns get harder and harder. So this is a simple blanket. Now, what is clever about this? So thinking about the knit along recently with Stephen West. So that was a modular knit, wasn't it? Every so many rows you had to stop and start with a new thing, and you had to leave things on your needle and then pick up stitch and so on. But what's clever about Virginia Woods Bellamy, excuse me, is she designed everything with the intention of not breaking the yarn. So there are sometimes you have to break a yarn, you know, there's no getting around that, but that was kind of the first thing she must have had in her mind. So everything is knitted in a certain direction, which doesn't always look like it's going to make sense until you do it, and then you think, wow, that was just genius, you know, because I've not had to break the yarn and I've managed to do a whole blanket. Well, not, you know, you're not going to get a whole blanket out of one volley out, you know what I mean? But if you were doing it small, you know, and this particular example here, it's she did it all in blue yarn as well. But that the color coding is so you know which order to knit it in. So you didn't have to change the colors. You could have done it all with one yarn in one color. And that's throughout the book. It's very much like that. And it kind of really sort of gets my nerdy juices flowing, if you like, because there's something really nerdy about it. And you know, I think it's very male brain. It's the graph thing again, like we were talking about the crochet graphs. You know, it's this idea of maps and schematics, and it's very engineering. You know, I'm not even speaking correctly, am I? You get my drift. But anyway, I've waffled off on and on and on and on about that. But please join us on Friday when we talk about this, because she's lovely and she's very she's fun. You know, when you see her, I mean, I've not met her yet, you know, but I know that we're going to get on well. She's fun. She's self-effacing. She shows you all the mistakes that she makes, which I kind of like. You know, I'm a bit like that with Knotty Knitwits. I kind of, I don't know, it's a bit of cruelty in me, but I like it when something's gone wrong and then they've had to fix it. And, you know, I don't know, there's something about that I like. And I think you'll, even if you're not interested in this style of knitting, this type of knitting, I think you would get something from watching her videos anyway, just even if you just have it on in the background as you're knitting, because what I don't understand about her channel, and she doesn't get the views that she deserves for the amount of work that she's put into this. I'm quite surprised that she isn't in the thousands of views, you know, because she deserves to be. And also I'm impressed that she was willing to come on my show, because a lot of people, a lot of normies, shall we say, would steer clear. And she was happy for me to put it in the magazine, because I think she's happy for as much sort of knowledge about number knitting to be out in the world as possible. But I was really impressed when she agreed to come on the show. So anyway, enough of that. I don't know whether Annie, A Stitch in the Sky, is still with us. I just said to her one day, so for those that don't know, Annie lives a couple of hours away from me. She lives in a seaside town on the other side of the country. And we met in Manchester, and we had a lovely afternoon where we never stopped talking. And she's now one of my friends. We need to meet up again at some point. I'm thinking of going over to the seaside to visit her, and because I want to meet the dogs. She's got these beautiful dogs. She is here. Yeah, she's here. So I just mentioned about doing that. Numbers was the theme of this issue, and quite late. I think it was quite late on a Sunday night, and I just said, "Oh, do you have any thoughts about that?" And she just wrote this little article, and I just think it's really sweet, and it's like. It kind of just fits, you know, because when you know the context of it, it's like, oh, that's really cool, you know, because I just said, oh, can you? And she wrote it like within a couple of hours, I think. So that's that. And then we got this welcome baby hat here by Patricia Taylor. And this is to go along with the welcome baby socks that Anna Knitter designed for I don't know what to call it. I'm going to call it a pro-life group, for want of a better phrase. I know it isn't quite that, but it kind of is. But I don't know. Anyway, it's a German charity that helps women look after their babies, especially when they don't want it initially. So they might have wanted to have an abortion, and they help them, and they finance them for, I think, up to 2 years after the baby's born. So they give them emotional support, financial support, spiritual support, I think. And the idea is that they get these little socks as a bit of a reminder that this is a real person that you're going to have, and Patricia designed a hat to go with it. And I think the aim eventually is to have an entire set of clothes for for newborn babies that are then given to the new mothers who go to this charity. And whether this is all in Germany, I'm not quite sure. I think it is, but I've got a feeling it is going to other people can use these patterns for anybody, your newborns in your family, or you can donate them to your local charities, and they're quite cute. Here we go. Yeah. We make the baby hats for crisis pregnancy centers. Yeah. And it's just cute, isn't it? It's just, and it's nice. It's something, I don't know, the world's a horrible place at the moment, and every now and again there's just something that's quite sweet and seemingly innocent, and I just think, yeah, it's about time we did things like that. So whenever you've got a little bit of extra yarn, feel free to knit one of those and donate it. Oh, this is from Amy, the little sister from Two Sisters and Some Yarn. And how prophetic this has been. She wrote an open letter to Stephen West in advance of the mystery knit along that has been so controversial. And it's very funny. If you read it, it is actually very funny. And she's a gifted writer, and I'm trying to convince her that she has to write more for the magazine. So please put some pressure on her. I think while she's doing a project, the advert on the other page here, this murderer mystery make along, this is a project that she's doing, which is quite a big project, and she's doing a lot of writing for this as well. So when this is over, please pressure her to do more writing for Block, because she has definitely got a gift for humorous writing. Now, I'm not even going to go into this because all I'll mention is that there's a little bit about nip slips. He has these holes in his shawls that show nipples if you're not careful, and it is just quite funny. But she has said that she's going to write a follow-up piece, so she needs to get a move on because we're running out of time. That kind of addresses this again, but in light of the swastika drama. So this is her advert. I think it's going to be great. I'm not going to say too much about it. I do know little bits about it. I've deliberately not got too involved because I do want it to be a bit of a surprise for me as well when it's all happening. But let's just say there's going to be lots of people taking part in this. Now I'm not going to say any more, but I think it's going to be fun. So now Tabitha, is Tabitha still here? Tabitha finally put a pattern in the magazine. I don't know if this was the first one she put in the magazine, and it's I don't know where she said it in her own life that everything she does for the magazine now is going to be named after Murder, She Wrote, simply because, one, I've never watched it, and two, I've got no desire to watch it because it kind of annoys me. So she spiked designing, which works for me. The more things that get designed, the better. At the bottom here, I'm going to start adding make-alongs, knit-alongs, and so on, like a little calendar of events. Now, I did miss quite a few off this because it was done right at the last minute, and it's a bit of a nightmare trying to get the organisers of these miles to actually to pin them down to get the information, especially Tabitha, because she always just says, "Can't you just do it?" And it's like, "Yeah, but can you give me the information, please?" It's like, "Oh, just look through all my past emails and you'll find it." And it's like, ugh. So I missed crochet He's not. Is it 8 crochet? He's not crocheted 8 or something. I can't remember now. She did a make along, a crochet make along, and I completely forgot to put it in. So I need to apologize to her. But hopefully, next time there'll be more as well. So I don't know whether there'll be one in the next issue because they kind of tend to be quarterly, don't they? Usually. So I'm not sure whether how we'll do it next time, but keep an eye on it anyway. These are our bloggers and vloggers. We've still not changed the font here, and now we're not going to because the idiots, the nutters as I call them, said that we had deliberately chosen this font because it looked like the N word. It's like, really, could I be bothered? No. Now we've got the Selbu mitten competition. And I hope you're all busy designing as we speak. So the idea behind this is that you have until the end of November to submit a design on paper. Well, or on, a photograph or on computer or whatever. And it's for a Selbu mitten. And the rules are simple. It has to be a mitten. You can change the physical design any way you want as long as it's a mitten. So I don't want any fingerless bits, chopped off, or no thumbs or anything like that. It has to have a thumb, has to have a mitten thing over the fingers. You don't have to do the cuff the same. You don't even have to do the thumb the same, as long as there is a thumb. But if you don't want to go down the route of completely redesigning it, use the template that we've provided and just get your crayons out and get your kids to get the crayons out. It doesn't have to be a knitter who designs it. However, as a knitter, I am kind of expecting you to know what is realistic when it comes to this kind of knitting, color work knitting, for example. If you, don't be having 17 colors in one row because that isn't going to work. So ideally, I mean, if you're new to designing, I would probably say just choose 2 colors, just have a monochrome mitten. And you can't go wrong with that, really. So either black or white, or blue and white, or red or white, or whatever. I mean, if you're a bit more experienced with Fair Isle or Intarsia, then obviously go wild. But the general rule, and I know this isn't set in stone, but the general rule is never have more colours in a row than 2. So try and keep to that rule if you can. You can use duplicate stitch. So if you do want, say if you're designing something with an animal on it and you want to have the eyes a different color, then use duplicate stitch. That's easier than trying to knit with a third color, So your kids can design this if you don't want to do it yourself. And then you just, put an eye over it and say, yeah, that'll work. Oh, that won't work. And just, tweak it a little bit. And then submit your designs to me by email, so you can take a photograph of the design, or if it's something you've done electronically on Excel or on Stitch Fiddle or whatever, email it over, and I'll be taking the names off them and giving them numbers, and then the patrons of Blocked, I'm going to be putting them all on Patreon for them to see them all without names, so hopefully nobody's going to know who's designed what, and then we're going to choose a winner for the design, the first design there. So that'll just be for the actual image, not the finished mitten. That's going to be a separate competition. So that will be at the end of November. So we've got 1 month left. So we've had a month, we've got a second month, so you've still got plenty of time. But then also running alongside it, so if you do want to knit the mitten and actually, show the finished mitten, there's a second competition which runs right up until New Year's Eve. So right up until December the 30th or 31st, whichever it is. And that will be judged by Liz Clothier. She's volunteered to judge that. And the winners will get, I haven't decided what it's going to be yet. You're either going to get a $25 Amazon voucher, or you're going to get a $25 voucher for a yarn dyer. Now, because what I was thinking is that, especially if your kids have designed it, they might not want anything from a yarn dyer. So that's why I'm thinking maybe I'll do Amazon. So if you do submit it, you might want to just put a little note, say I'd prefer Amazon, or I'd prefer a dyer's vouchers. That I'm limited in what I can choose from. For example, I'm not going to give you any dyer's vouchers because it might be someone that I don't particularly want to give money to. But if it's one of our dyers, then absolutely. So, you know, Chicken Lady, Wenith, or Euphoria, or Potions, any of those yarn dyers. But Amazon's probably the easiest one, isn't it? And that's also the easiest one to actually give, because I can do that via email, and rather than having to go through a third party to you. So I don't know. We're still thinking about that, but it'll be the value of $25 for each of the competitions. And then once we have those winners, the idea will be that I'll publish pictures of all of the designs. And if they're rude, or if they're X-rated in any way or above 18, I will still show them, but there'll be a link in the magazine where you will have to choose to look at them. So all the others will just be there for you to see. But anything X-rated, you'll have to make that decision yourself whether you look at them or not. Because otherwise it's, I know some people aren't going to like that, and I'm not in the, in the business of just pissing people off for no reason at all. There's usually a reason behind my pissing people off. So you should be able to print these off. So if you look, this is the left mitten, so it's the front and back of the left mitten. Where the red line is where the thumb will start. So what you will do is you will knit to the red line, and then you'll put those stitches either on waste yarn, or you can knit in a provisional line of stitches if you know how to do that. So if you don't know how to do that, just put them on a provisional, on a piece of waste yarn, or one of those big knitter safety pins, or whatever you would use, and then carry on knitting the design. And then you would continue with the thumb patterns here. I've put 2 thumbs in, even though you could probably duplicate them, just in case you do a different pattern on each mitten, because that's perfectly acceptable to do that. If you do knit them, you need to knit at least one. You don't have to knit both of them, but if the pattern is different on both mittens, then really you need to knit both mittens. So if you don't feel like you're fast enough, or you can't be bothered to knit, 2 mittens, then keep to one design. But the other good thing about this is once you've taken photos of it, this could be a Christmas present for somebody. So, if you want to do one that's personalized, that's fine, as long as what you put on there isn't, giving away their address and their date of birth and their financial secrets. If it's like, for, Maria or whatever, then that's perfectly fine to enter that. So you can use your finished pattern as for yourself as a gift. Each size is all done by shifting needle sizes, which is what traditionally people did with Selbu mittens anyway. And I felt that was the best way of approaching this, because it was going to be too complicated to have it as a competition if you had to then look at different stitch counts and so on. So we have tested the mitten, and it does work. Morgan tested it, and it's been tech edited as well, so there's no problem with that. And so it's all down to you guys now as to how you do it. And then the pattern to knit it, there's if you need any extra information rather than just using the chart, that's all provided here with a key to what the symbols are. I've just been, is Knit Night live soon? Tell me when Knit Night is, because I want to finish before Knit Night. So for everyone watching, don't forget to watch them shortly. They're always fun. Okay, so then moving on from that, now this is another one of the stories from, I always get this wrong, because I used to work with a lady called Marie Prokop. So I keep saying this all the time. And this lady is D. Marie Prokop. So I keep calling her Marie, but that isn't actually her name. So D. Marie Prokop. So she writes fiction, and every now and again she sends in some fiction for us. And I just love having them in there, because I just think it reminds me of the old-fashioned knit magazines where they used to have fiction. Anne's just said, am I going to be joining Knit Night? I might come for about half an hour. But I'm getting a bit hoarse, so I probably will be late, but I will come for about half an hour. So I'll probably be done in it's going to start in about 16 minutes, but I probably will be finished by then. So stick with us for now. You don't have to run off yet. And then what we've got here now is I've been talking about this for a long time, and it's about shawl recipes, and this kind of fitted in with Tabitha's design, because Tabitha's design is a blanket recipe. And so each issue now, I'm going to try and put in as many recipes for different shape shawls and blankets as I possibly can. So this issue is all about squares. So I try and talk about every kind of way you can knit a square, from the center out, from the outside to the center, mitered on one side, or just the simplest, which is cast on and then knit in a square, and so on. And the idea behind this is that, I mean, this is all people do with shawl patterns, because the triangle one, which will be in the next issue, is probably the one that you're going to want to have the most. You know, you can design your own shawls from those simple recipes, because the thing is, nobody owns the recipe for shawls, because everybody knits them the same way, unless it's some bizarre shape like Stephen West would do. But even his general shapes tend to be either, you know, triangular or crescent or whatever. But you take, you know, just look at how it's constructed, go and find a pattern book, you know, make sure the stitch count fits the amount of stitches you want, and just go for it and knit it. And then you can, you know, sell your own shawl pattern. So the idea behind these square ones is these are mostly blankets, but there's a few things you can do with these. The center of a traditional hat is just a square, and there were all sorts of different ways of doing it, and then they would have a border around the outside. Now the border I've not done here, but there's enough information here for you to create millions of squares that you can sew together, one huge square for your bed, or a square that, you know, if you fold it across the diagonal, is a shawl. You know, and that's all these hats are, you know, these square shawls. So, you know, so feel free, design one, use one of these templates, and then design a full shawl and throw it in blocked. We'll test knit it, and we'll get it tech edited, and we'll put it in, and you'll be a designer. That's all it takes. So anyway, so this is the last. So this is the grift. This is where I'm begging for patrons to join. So I'm gonna, you know, I've been very coy about this. So for nearly 2 years now, because we've been going for nearly 2 years. It'll be 2 years at the end of January, and I feel awkward about asking for money, because the thing is, I'm so conscious that, you know, the other people in the knitting world and crochet world are just grifting constantly, and they don't. You know, you don't often get anything for that money. So the thing that people have accused me of the same, we don't get much for the Patreon amount. So it's $5 a month is what I charge. And for that, what you get is the magazine. So the thing is, it's how the magazine is produced. There's overheads, you know, this app that I'm using to show the magazine, that has to be paid for. And it's not cheap, actually, and it's only the Patreon money that allows me to pay for that. And the other thing as well is there's not a lot I can give patrons in terms of physical gifts, you know, because it's bearing in mind, you know, I'm in the UK, so then it would add all the postage and things like that. So what I have decided to do instead is that what patrons get, which to some people might not be, you might think, oh, well, that's not worth it, but they get a preview. They get a week to see the magazine before anyone else does, and they tend to see all the mistakes, you know, so they will see things that we've missed in the proofreading process. And because during that week that the patrons have the magazine, we're still working on it, and we'll be finishing things off. But the other thing now that Patreons get, did I say patrons? I meant patrons, is if you're a patron, you automatically get ad space in the magazine. Now, as long as it's legal, you know, and there's no morality issues around it, you know, you're not selling sex or selling an OnlyFans or anything like that, there's no limit to what you can put in as an ad. So, for example, if you want to, I don't know, if you're having a de-stash of all your yarn and you've set up a website, you know, you can, if you're a patron, you can put an ad for that in that magazine for that month. And if you're still a patron, you know, the next time around, you can put it in again. Or if you're a yarn dyer and you want to be a patron, then we'll put an advert in for you for your business. So if you're a designer, you know, if you're a designer and you've just created a new design that you want to charge for, So you don't want to put it in the magazine for free, but you want people to buy it. Do an advert, be a patron, do an advert, and we will advertise that pattern that takes them to, your pay for pattern site, wherever that is. You'll make money from that, hopefully. Anything that you can think of. Even if it's not yarn related, if you can provide a service or a product that makes sense to put in a magazine. If it's a local shop that you literally have to go in person to, then it's going to be a bit tricky. It's kind of like it's going to get lost, isn't it? Whereas if you're an online shop, whack it in, because I don't think most of the patrons at the moment, I don't think many of them know that we're doing this now. So we only have a few adverts in, and I just think it's the only way really that I can pay people back in any kind of meaningful way. I am trying to work out other ways of giving patrons rewards, but like I say, it's a little bit tricky when it comes to physical things because of here we go. Says he's put says he is Cezanne. She does a lot of the proofreading. She does the tech editing and she writes articles as well. She's very involved in the magazine. So she said, yeah, we accept all kinds of fibery people and even those who have no relation to the fiber world. Yeah, if you're a patron, if you don't knit and you don't crochet, but you kind of like what we're doing, you can still be a patron and you can still put your ad in. I don't know, if you sell music online, you can do that. You put that in, anything really. I have nothing to advertise. I just like donating to the cause. Oh, thank you, Emily. Maybe we should just put an advert for me then. An advert for Blocked in Blocked. But yeah, I'm gonna start doing this. I think what I'm gonna do, I'm only gonna talk about the Patreon when I do these reviews. So I've caught up now. We're actually up to date. So the next one I do will be the next issue. So I'm going to talk with Cezanne and probably a couple of other people and see whether it would be better to do these in advance of releasing the issue or straight after or a week after or whatever. I'm not quite sure which way would be better. So from now on, I'm hoping that I'll kind of be in sync with the magazine. So when I do these, and then it will just be probably a half an hour show. Although I said this would be an hour, and we're nearly on 2 hours, I think, aren't we? 1 hour 42. How's that happened? Oh, just waffling, isn't it? So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up now because I think we've covered everything. Oh, there's me, big. Oh, I'll tell you what I will show you before I go. This is a future pattern. It's going to be in... It's going to be in next issue. And Therese, who's just left, she did the test crochet for this. This is my ultimate nip slip for Tabitha and Amy. So it's just a cowl. But as with my other cowls, this could easily become a blanket or a lap blanket or a bed blanket or whatever. And I was thinking about it and I thought, do you know what? It doesn't have to be completely solid because I was going to put something in it. And then I thought, no, I'm going to just have it as... because the thing is, when you wear it, though, you're not going to really feel anything with those holes in it, are you? And I thought it's quite. I really like it, and it's called the. It's called the Salt Strawman cowl, and that is it's named after. If do you know what a maelstrom is? So a maelstrom is like a whirlpool in the water, and it's got some very specific things about it that I don't know now, but and in somewhere like Norway, somewhere in Scandinavia, I don't think it's Norway, it might be Denmark, I forget now, but there's a whole series of them. It's like the biggest group of maelstroms in the world, and it's called the Salt Strawman Strait, I think. So each one of these represents a whirlpool, and it's because the next issue is Windmills of Your Mind, which is pinwheels, circles, spirals. So if you think about that song, it was, what was it? Wheels within wheels and circles in spirals and so on and so on. So, and as fortune would have it, it's just landed when Stephen West did his pinwheel design, which everybody thought was a swastika. Well, not everybody, but some people thought was a swastika. So I think the cover for the next issue is going to be Stephen West's swastical. So I've been sent quite a few really great pictures of just that middle design. I'm not sure how we're going to do it yet. I'm going to speak to BS Designs, our graphic designer, because I need her to check whether the picture has high enough resolution to be on the cover. So, and then inside we'll probably put as many of the pictures as possible, because the Stephen West thing, you're not allowed now to send, or he won't show the original design in anything now. So it can't be out there. So I think, yeah, we'll put, I'm happy to publish it because it's a pinwheel. We all know that. Oh yeah. So, yeah, this is true. I chose the theme before the pinwheel thing. So it's just complete coincidence. And if you look back in the magazine, you'll see when I very first suggested that as a theme. So I can prove that I haven't done it just to, cash in on the drama. Just reading some of these. Here we go. This is the thing. Yeah, like a circle in a circle, like a ring around a ring, never ending. Yeah, and there's a spiral bit in it as well, isn't there? It's a really cool song actually. Although I don't like the original, I prefer some of the covers. And I think we're kind of about done now. And there's one last thing I want to say about the next issue. Here. You don't want to miss the next issue because there's going to be some. Well, one, we've got Amy hopefully writing about Stephen West. We've got, I think we've got a couple of people. I think Cezanne's writing about it, but I think we've got someone else writing about the Woolen Folk disaster. Is that the right word? Disaster, whatever, clown world. And I'm going to be writing about Felicia, who's the organizer of Woolen Folk. And it's going to be quite, what's the word? Quite the expose, shall we say. I found out a lot about it, and it's absolutely shocking. And it's also very annoying when you know some of the other stuff that's gone on. But I won't give anything away now, but that's something to look forward to. I'm still in the process of writing it. And yeah, bye Felicia. But apparently saying that is racist, but then everything's racist, isn't it? I don't know why it's racist, because I don't know where the original phrase bye Felicia came from. Yes, Emily, absolutely. It is the gift that keeps on giving. There's something every day. Every day something comes out about it. Yeah, it says the drama is heavy right now. Yeah. Which we had a discussion about this today, because I was talking to Liz Clothier in one of our forums, and she was sort of saying how she just wishes, everything was just about knitting and not about the drama. And I had to admit, I do actually love the drama. But the reason for that is that if there was no drama, I'd have very little to write about. And then she said, well, you could write about history of knitting. It's like, oh, well, yeah, but nobody really. Because this is the thing I've noticed, is that people often say to me, oh, well, can't you just focus on positive things? Just focus on the knitting. And it's like, okay, so we've done a few issues where we just do that and it's just positive. But then the reader numbers go down because people want the dirt. They want the goss. You know what I mean? And if we're honest, I think we all do. Yeah, it's like a train wreck and I love it. Yeah, exactly. And I think we all do secretly, don't we? I think it's a bit like that. What do you call it? Secret pleasure, isn't it? It's where is it? Have I put it on? No. It came, so Bye Felicia came from the movie Friday. Right. I've not heard of that movie. I don't know. So the crackhead neighbor that asked Craig to borrow his microwave, her name was Felicia, and so Craig and Smokey said, bye Felicia, the rest was history. And Annie's still in disbelief. I'm assuming you're still in disbelief over what's been going on about Woolen Folk. Yeah, because something that I found out, I think it was yesterday I found out, and I've shared it, and nobody else is talking about it. And it's like, why not? Because, anyway. Right, I think it's probably time for me to go, because it must be time for knit night. So I don't know how I can't put it on the screen. I'm sorry. If someone can write the name of Knit Night on the screen, the actual the name of the YouTube channel, so people who don't know it can write it down and then go and watch them, because it's like going to a knitting night, literally like going to a group of friends, and they talk shit, and 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 last time, here we go, yeah, it's Knit Night with Night, Nite, and yeah, so go and see the homeless lady in her car, and and it's usually quite funny. I mean, the audio, it can be a bit hit and miss because they're doing it, you know, with earpieces and mic and phones, but it's actually good fun. So please go and watch. And I might be appearing on there. I'm going to be late, but I'll be on there. So anyway, thank you all for watching. It's been a pleasure. I always get a bit nervous when I'm doing it on my own, and I kind of waffle a lot more and talk faster. But it's been good. So anyway, all of you watching, you have been blocked.